Hi everyone, I'm going to show you the round 1 game from the finals of the Croatian Cup. As you may know, my team and I have qualified by winning the Zagreb Cup, and in the first round we faced a very strong team. Only on board 1 we were equal, FIDE Master against FIDE Master. On board 2 I faced Luka Karlušić, who is now an FM, and this was 2 months ago. Very strong. I don't know what else to say. I played him twice before this game. We drew both games, but the first time he was, I don't know, 1700, and in the second game he was maybe 2000 or something like that. Very, very strong. He's a very young player, very promising, and I hope he becomes a Grandmaster soon. I'm sure he will. He's just very, very strong. So usually against d4, Luka plays d5. And this is what I was expecting. Excuse me, but he surprised me with knight f6. And I had a brief look at the Nimzo, of course, but I did not expect it. So e6, knight c3, allowing the Nimzo, and bishop b4. I played queen c2. And in this position there are several moves for black. Castles, d5, knight c6, or what he played, c5. And on c5 you take this as white, and black doesn't normally take. I think the most annoying move to face is knight a6. The main move is castles, but Luka took the pawn. And in this position I'd actually been preparing something kind of odd against this. So the main line is knight f3, and on queen b6, e3. And okay, this is just the main line position. But I thought of transposing to the same position for white without the queen on b6, which can be very annoying, so I played e3 first. Now there's no reason to play queen b6 for black. And I want to go a3, b4 or a3, b3, and then bishop b2. So my setup is a bishop on b2, a bishop on d3, and a knight on f3. So this move order is very rare. It has only been played a couple of times, but there's really no way to punish it. The engine says equal instead of plus 0.3, but okay. Luka castled. The best move was d5. This is the way to equalize. So knight f3 now, and b6, which is imprecise. I mean, probably d5 is still best, and on d5 I go a3. And dc4, bishop c4 seems fine. My bishop hasn't moved yet. This is just going to be a symmetrical pawn structure. I'm pretty sure he wanted to avoid playing d5 so that we don't get a symmetrical pawn structure. Oh, sorry, I also forgot one of our games. We actually played 3 times. We had 2 draws, and he beat me in the Amateur European Championship 2 years ago. He crushed me in the Kramnik Sicilian. So, yeah. In any case, b6, he wants to play bishop b7. I played a3, he played bishop b7, and now I can either play b3 or b4. And this is always a tough decision. Obviously, I didn't know this exact position with b6, bishop b7. It's much safer to delay b4 because c4 could be tender. So for example, bishop d3, if he plays a5, of course I play b3 immediately, and I probably play it regardless. And we get a position like this, something like queen e7, bishop b2, black plays something, maybe h6 is already necessary, it could be getting scary, and then castles. And my pieces are good, c4 is defended, b5 is weak, and it's just a good position. But I played b4. And it's about equal according to the engine compared to b3. It's just that this position is slightly tougher to play. So bishop e7, bishop b2, a5. This is the way to punish b4, but of course I had anticipated a5. That's the way to disrupt my structure and to ruin my position. So I cannot really ignore this because I lose the pawn. I don't want to play queen b3. I don't like queen b3. I need the queen on this diagonal. So I had decided to play b5 on a5 before I had played b4. So now this is an interesting imbalance. The c5 square is going to be weak, but the reason I think I can get away with this, and I can, is that I have knight a4, and I'm going to be covering c5, and b6 could be weak. So he played d6, not to blockade the c pawn, although that could be useful, but to play knight d7, knight c5. And now I have this backwards pawn, which is a permanent weakness, but I think I can play around it. And according to the engine, this is fine. I haven't made any mistakes. Bishop d3, knight bd7. And now I played knight a4. I shouldn't have played knight a4 immediately. I think queen e2 is slightly more precise. I shouldn't really worry about the knight being on c5 because it's not really doing much, but I didn't want to allow that, so I played knight a4 straight away. Queen e2, excuse me, is better because I keep an eye on the c4 pawn and I can play rook c1. He played rook c8, and in this position I played rook d1, which seemed kind of useful. Maybe I can get away with c5 after queen e2. That is a mistake. I should have castled, and if he decides to take on f3, that's perfectly fine. No issue there. So if bishop f3, g f3, something like knight e5, I can always play queen e2. Takes on d3, queen d3, knight d7. The knight's coming to e5, but again, I have time to defend. Maybe rook c1 and on knight e5, queen e2. Seems fine. I played rook d1. Not that that's a big mistake. It's fine. I wanted to be lined up with these pieces. Of course, if d5 is played, and he did play it immediately, my queen is hanging if I take. So rook d1 basically puts the rook opposite his knight and queen. And since the knight is probably going to come out to c5 or e5, then the rook is opposite the queen if he plays d5. So he played d5. And again, according to the engine, this is equal. Minus 0.2, so very slight advantage to black. I cannot take, I lose my queen, so queen e2. And here's the issue. My knight is stranded, and if I don't do anything very, very quickly, my knight could be in trouble. So bear that in mind. He took on c4. I took with the bishop, of course. He played queen c7. And now I made the first relatively serious mistake, although the position is still playable and still very close to equal. But the tough part was that I didn't understand what was going to come. So I played bishop b3. The reason I played bishop b3 is so that I can keep my bishop on an active diagonal and so that I can keep defending my stranded knight. However, I should have played bishop d3 to prevent a bishop trade. Now bishop d5, which is what Luca played against bishop b3, isn't possible, and there's simply no way to put pressure on this knight unless you play bishop d5, bishop b3, which doesn't really work. Now I can just castle, and if you play bishop b3, I can go rook c1, gaining a tempo on your queen, and then moving the knight away to c3. So that doesn't work. And on queen c7, I played bishop b3. It just seemed safer to keep defending the knight. But when he played bishop d5, I was extremely worried. And I started calculating a lot and going very deeply. I mean, this is a very instructive position. It's a type of position which you can lose in a move or two, but it's technically close to equal. So if you play precisely, you're going to be fine. I have to exchange the bishops. That part is forced. But I went forward and forward and forward. And the main issue is, once we exchange the bishops, what do I play to defend against queen c4? Luckily, I have a rook on d1. So in the event of queen c4, rook c4, I have rook d4 defending. So the knight is relatively safe. But still, you have to be very careful. So I took the bishop. He took with the knight, of course. And in this position, I made a pretty serious mistake. I played knight d4. And again, according to the engine, this move is fine. It's not a mistake according to the engine. It's okay. It's not the best move, but it's 0.1 away from the best move. The best move was g3, which I hadn't even considered. It didn't even cross my mind. So if queen c4, rook c4, I can now play knight c3. saving my knight because the knight on d7 is hanging, and I'm perfectly fine. Not that I couldn't have played this had I played something else and not g3, but g3 is just, for some reason, the engine top choice. Now I'm going to explain why I played knight d4. I played it so that I could have knight c6. And I had completely miscalculated the two versions of the variation I was hoping to get. I got one of them. The other one I could have forced, but I didn't, because I didn't understand the difference well. So of course he plays queen c4. Okay, my knight's attacked, I have to do something. And I made the wrong choice. So you have two choices. Queen takes queen or knight c6. Pause the video, figure it out. It's a very instructive tactical position. So the correct move is queen takes queen. And I'm going to show you why after you've seen the refutation of my idea. Now here is my problem. I had calculated this on move 19 when I played knight d4, and I had calculated until move 24, basically. So the line that happened was knight c6. Of course, if you take the knight, then I just take, and I mean, I don't think queen takes a4 is even playable, because I can even take on d5 first. I think rook d5. Yeah, okay, sorry. I take on d5, then I take on e7, and I take on c8. What am I talking about? So queen a4 isn't playable. So he has to give up the exchange, and I knew that. So rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, again, attacking my knight. And now the variation is forced. I have to play e4. I don't have another way to save my knight. He plays knight f4. I have to play queen f3. And he played the move I was expecting. Not that you couldn't defend with g5 and the same thing would have happened, but he played knight g6, which is just safer. And now in a second, literally 1 second, without even thinking, I was so happy that my calculation was correct that I played the next move like literally immediately and wanted to throw up and cry and scream and resign at the same time. You'll never guess what I played. It's idiotic. It makes no sense at all. I played queen c3, and I was expecting him to almost resign. What's wrong with queen c3, you may ask? e4 is hanging. I didn't even consider that my pawn was now on e4, where it can be taken by the queen. When I was calculating this, in my mind, I had left the pawn on e3. I had forgotten to include e4, knight f4 into the picture I was trying to visualize. Of course, if the pawn was on e3, this would be completely winning for white, because the queen trade is forced, and then I gain a tempo on the d7 knight. I infiltrate on d7, potentially I play f4, if knight e5, I take on b6, it's all collapsing. Unfortunately, I'm completely losing. He took on e4, and I'm going to show you the rest of the game. But before I do, I want to show you why queen takes queen is correct. So there's no other way to save the knight. I either take the queen or play knight c6. Queen takes queen is fine. He has to take with the rook. My knight is attacked, and now I play knight c6. Now there is no exchange sacrifice. If he takes, he's just busted. So he cannot sacrifice the rook. His bishop is attacked. So if he takes the knight, I take on d5 and take on e7 with check. So for example, knight a4. Oh no, I don't give up the exchange. I take on e7 and then on d7. Yeah, sorry. So once again, this isn't playable. He needs to move the bishop. And now where can he move the bishop? The engine move is bishop c5, which allows me to just trade my knight. I don't believe he would have played this. This is just, I mean, it seems completely equal. He's the one who has to fight because he's much higher rated, and I think this is, I don't think I should have any issues here at all. What else can he do? If he plays bishop d6, that's bad because of knight c3. And now again, my knight is tactically immune because d6 hangs in the end. For example, takes. And once again, perfectly fine. What else can he do? If he plays bishop f6, trying to move the bishop, well, sorry. Not here. Queen c4, knight c6. If he plays bishop f6, then I can just take, knight takes, and rook d4, and I'm defending everything. If he plays rook c1, I have rook d1. If rook c4, then rook d4, and just a draw. And finally, if he plays bishop d8, then I have rook d4. I can even exchange the bishops first. Not that I would have, because that improves his rook, but just rook d4 should be fine. That's why exchanging queens and playing knight c6 was perfectly fine. I played knight c6 immediately thinking, I have queen c3 in the end, he cannot go for this. And I actually had no idea what he was going to play. Okay, let me show you the rest of the game. Rook c6, pawn takes, queen takes, e4, queen c3, and time to resign, basically king f1. He cannot take on a4 because he gets mated, so he throws in bishop f6. And yeah, now that's the end of the game. I played queen b3. If this hasn't been a team competition, I would have resigned immediately on queen c3. I saw what he was going to do before he took on e4. I saw it immediately. And I remember Mate's face on the board next to mine. He has this way of nodding when he sees a good move. He's happy. I played queen c3 and he nodded. And then his eyes widened when he realized, when it dawned on him, how stupid my move was. Anyway, I would have resigned had it not been a team competition. But I don't know what I was trying to do, but I tried queen f3. If he trades queens, then I'm fine. So queen takes knight. I'm just down a piece. I'm down 2 pieces for a rook. And yeah, I'll just show you how the game ended. Not only am I down a piece, I'm also getting mated. I have to keep my queen on the h1, a8 diagonal. He blocks the diagonal. He delivers the check and plays knight e5, and here I finally resigned. There's no hope left. He's just gonna go knight f3 and mate me. An absolutely disgusting game. The worst part was that we lost the match 2.5, 1.5? Yeah, we won on board 1, Mate won, I lost on board 2, Daniel drew on board 3. Oh no, Daniel lost on board 3 and then Vlatko drew on board 4. So yeah, unfortunately I let my team down in the first game. What can you do? A very bad game I'm trying to forget, but again I had to show it to you. Thank you for watching, let me know what you think, stay tuned for more chess, bye bye!